So the next question is, I was wondering if it's worth switching from a side bar to a V bar setup on a compound. What are the advantages and disadvantages of both for target shooting? So this is going to be interesting because I have no reasoning for this, but basically all recurve shoot a V bar. I can't think of anyone that shoots a side bar.
Anyone.
Can you think of anyone?
No, like zero.
Literally
I don't
zero.
think there's been a significant recurve archer not using V-bars for 50 years.
Yeah, that's
I've
probably...
opened myself up there, but I think that's the truth. But the question said compound.
Compound, right? So, and now I'm trying to think, I can't think of many compounds that actually shoot a V-bar. I think all of them pretty much shoot a sidebar, is that right?
All of them is probably a little bit strong.
Okay.
You could happily say the vast majority of compound target archers shoot one side rod.
One side rod, yeah.
One offset rod is by far. So just to be clear, if you're a right-handed archer, you're having it on the left side of your bow, often either connected where the front stabilizer is, or vastly popular, connected at the bottom of your bow, because most of the compound bows now come with a rear stabilizer mount, which is normally near the bottom of the bow, and having a 12-15 inch rod in there is by far the most popular. But I'm going to take the question as it is how do you know? Because there is some champions out there who shoot not more so. The people I'm thinking of are actually American guys. There's a couple of American guys, and I don't want to say their name just in case they've changed, but there's definitely a few people out there. But this is one of the few things in archery where you can do a relatively easy test, because what we're looking for is your bow to stay upright. That's as simple as that. There's very rarely, there's been a few examples where I've had athletes who are deliberately loading up one side because they like to fight against something. Rio Wild had a bow one season where if I picked it up, it would sit at like this angle. He literally had so much weight on the side.
That's interesting.
That was not, he was trying something different there. He was not trying to balance his bow to sit upright. He was clearly wanting something to fight against. I don't quite understand why, but that was an outlier. There's not many people who do that. Most of the people, you can do this simple test. We're going to put an arrow in the bow, although we're not going to shoot it, and we're just going to draw up onto the target with the bubble in the middle, aim at the target, close our eyes, count to 7, count to 5, whatever works for you, open your eyes, where's the bubble? And we're going to repeat that 6 times. What I normally get people to do is do one test like that, then shoot one arrow, do one test like that, then shoot one arrow. And we're going to look just to let the body reset. If you do 6 in a row, I think you can lose your feeling. And I just want you to know, does it always go to the same place? Now, if sometimes it's a little bit left, sometimes it's a little bit right, sometimes it's in the middle, maybe the balance of your bow is pretty close. If every time you do that, your bow has leaned over to the right, we'll call it, top limb to the right, and your bubble's gone to the left. If that happens every time, then we can correct it with our side rod, and we can either move our side rod further out from the bow, or we could keep it in the same position and add more weight. So it's up to you. Do you feel like you want to add more weight because you're feeling strong, or you can keep the weight exactly the same and just make a mark on your V-bar before you move it, and just move, or your offset rod, make a mark, move it out one little segment, try it again, and just test until you get it so that you can close your eyes, and most of the time when you open it back up, it's somewhere around the middle, or at least it doesn't always go in the same direction. That's the test I do to work out what balance we need on your bow. And when we do that, most people find all they need is one offset rod to get the balance. Now, some people, I keep bringing the rod closer and closer in because they keep finding their bow is tipping top limb to the left. So we keep bringing the weight in to try and straighten it up. Now, if I get all the way in and I still can't straighten your bow, then we're going to go and buy a V-bar, and we're going to go and buy a twin rod, and then we're going to start adding some weight to this side. Is your shooting progressing as you like, or would you like some expert coaching from a friendly face? If so, the details are in the description. Okay, but most athletes, 99% of the time, if they can get it balanced with just a single rod, they will keep shooting the single rod and they don't feel the need to go and get two. Now, of course, you could have a twin setup and still find the balance because you could have twice as much weight on one side as the other. But most athletes don't feel the need. They get the performance, and most of the world records I can think of, most of them, if not all, are shot by people shooting a single rod. That has, in the last 15 years, I remember first seeing that setup actually in 2009, 2010. Bee Stinger were the first sort of company, it felt like to me as a European, that felt like they were the first company literally pushing that sort of stabilizer setup. Because before that, everyone on the team had had V-bars on their compound. And then 2009 had that company particularly pushing that stabilizer design. Obviously, you can use any make of rod, but they were the first company really suggesting this, and it made a clear performance difference going for a one back rod, lots of weight, more neutral balance, and really now it's taken over their entire compound work. If you walked along the World Championship, I want to say 95% of bows plus will be one long rod out the front, 30 inches, one side rod out the back, 12, 15 inches. But you can do that balance test. And if you do that balance test and you can't get it balanced, then maybe then that's perfectly fine. There's no disadvantage. If you need a V-bar to get your bow upright, go buy a V-bar, no problem.
And coming from a recurve, it's kind of hard for me to understand why that is. Do you know why most people end up shooting with one side rod versus, because in my kind of naive recurve brain, I'm just like, oh, well, you just want two. It's more stable, stabilizers on a bike kind of thing. Like, that's the naive.
Sash.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of the heavy things are on the right side of the bow.
So it's just the counterbalance in the sight.
The right side of the riser weighs twice as much as the left side of the riser because it's got the cutout. Now, even if you've got a shoot through, that shoot through is tiny piece of aluminium just to take out that minuscule little bit of flex. So that 50% of the riser weight is on the right hand side. Then you're going to go and screw on your beautiful sight and your big chunky scope. They're all on the right hand side as well.
Yeah.
And even when you go down to the cams, even when you look at the cams, the majority of the cam is on the right hand side because the cables are on the right hand side. So when you look at the cam, 75% of the thickness of the cam, I know it's a tiny amount of weight, but I'm just using it as an example. That's all on the right side as well.
So do you think actually...
The cable guard, right hand side.
Yeah, is on the right. Do you think actually recurves should also consider this? Because maybe it's something that recurves are missing rather than compounds doing.
I've had this, I know... Oh, I bet you it's a small percentage, 10% of archers who end up putting one extra weight on the opposite side to their sight just to try and... But I think the recurve bow, you're much more aware if you do lean it.
Yeah.
But it is a good... Just literally this week, I told an athlete he's got a problem with seeing his limb tip move, and I was like, I would have told him to do this, eyes drawing up with your eyes and then closing your eyes, so no clicker on the bow. Draw up, aim, and then just close your eyes and wait. And I was getting him to do the same test. He hasn't got a bubble to look at, so he's going to have to look at the videos after just to see, is he leaning over? Because some people find it more of an issue than others. The lower on the recurve, the lower you drop your center of gravity, the easier it is for the bow to remain upright. So if you tip your V-bars down, you're lowering the center of gravity. You put a weight in the bottom of your bow, either in the back or the front, you're lowering the center of gravity. So there's lots of things you can do to help your recurve bow stay upright.
Have that instead, because that's why I never understood the top rods on the recurve. A lot of people used to have top rods, and I'd always think if you lean your top rod, if you lean your bow, then your top rod is going to pull your bow even more in that same direction because of how the weight's falling. So I was like, why do so many people do this? So it makes more sense.
It was counterintuitive. It was that rod. If they put that rod in the bottom, that would have made perfect sense. But when I started recurve archery in 1999, at that time I had a video of the Olympics, and every single athlete in the top 8, men and women, had a top rod, little short one. So I went and brought a little short top rod because everyone had one.
Yeah, I did as well.
I didn't really understand why, because it should have been better to be strapping weight to the bottom of your bow to keep your bow upright. But again, with recurve, there's so much, some of it, with a compound, it's pretty easy. We want to hold your bow as still as possible. Then we can shoot a surprise shot and we'll hit the thing we were aiming at. And if we can make your bow aim stiller, is that the word? More steady, you'll score more points. And on the recurve, it's not quite the same because you can have your bow aiming still, but it doesn't feel a good balance, so you can't get a good release, so the score goes down the drain. So recurve has always got this mystery, it needs to be more dynamic, and the feeling of the bow is so much more important. Whereas on the compound, as long as that dot was in the middle, it's probably going to go there. So all we need to worry about is putting the dot in the middle.
And with the recurve, I guess that top rod gives that
there.
roll. Yeah, but that does make sense. And I just I was curious about like why, I guess the side rod is more common with the compounds, but it's because of that weight balance on the compound bow with the sight.
And like we touched on last week, the less holding weight you have, the more the bow is prone to moving around. Whereas a recurve, you got that tight string, and that tight string, generally speaking, is being held upright by your fingers. Because again, I had an athlete who's just moving his fingers like this, and the top of his bow is doing that as well. He had no idea, fair enough. But your fingers are trying to keep the bow upright, and it's less of a problem because that string is so taut. But I want to say maybe 10% of recurves have slightly more weight on one side than the other, but it's not. Most people don't,
rare,
do they?
Isn't it?
I done it because it sounded good when I was beginning, and then by the end of it, I had the same weight on either side, and I never had a problem with bow lean, whether it's the fingers keeping it straight or whether it's, I don't know. But yeah, it's easy to see. One is totally dominant on the recurve, and the other one is totally dominant on the compound. But as a coach, I have no issue. If you need V-bars to keep your bow upright, sure. Sadly, it will cost you twice as much. If you stayed till the end because you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. It really helps me.